Your host, David Combs. Wow. Heard any good jokes lately? Looks like we've got a lot to talk about. I'm out. Seems like the WFT have found themselves right now. Quick. Shout out Mr. Tony. Tony is not feeling tonight. I'm going to go solo. So, difficulties I will make a disclaimer on. But thank to us to use the studio tonight. And WFT just didn't look a lot with the this okay. It's a results based. It's show business. Haskins just not good enough yesterday. And oh, since I'm by myself, I am going to go maskless. Hold on, let me do that. Whew. There we go. No mask today since I'm going to be in the room by myself. Back out from the Bullet School, local guy done good. 50 touchdowns in college, his first year starting. Looked to have a promise. Hey, Steve, thanks for joining us. Tony saying Haskins was good is most hilarious thing I've heard. Well, listen. Thanks for your input on that. So why don't we start at the beginning? Okay. Oh, that's okay, Cody. We got you, babe. Let's start from the beginning. Should Dwayne Haskins have been drafted? So the situation with that that was a decision that was called or made by the owner, Daniel Snyder, on draft day or moving up into the draft. A lot of back and forth in the media right now. There's an article by Diana Rossini talking about FT front that was helping make the decisions on the quarterback that was upset that Haskins was going to be the pick that Snyder was going to overrule his staff on. Okay, Dan Snyder writes the check. Okay, I get it, but Diana Rossini's that this individual from the WFT told her that he was about to be physically ill. Okay, I don't buy that. If bringing Dwayne Haskins into your organization was to the point of making you ill in the room when your boss makes the decision, you don't get to go 2 years down the road and say, "Oh, wait a minute, I was the guy that said you shouldn't have brought him in here." No, no. I'm not going to buy that. And it's just that type of media is just kind of unacceptable to me. Here's the situation: you brought the guy in. It's going to take 2 to 4 years to develop a quarterback. 2 to 4 years. We know this. Okay. If you look at Dwayne Haskins' numbers, just by the numbers, with Josh Allen and compare them after 11 starts, and he started 15 games here, Haskins did. After Josh Allen's 11th start and Dwayne Haskins' 11th start, you can put their statistics right up next to each other and they mesh. They're right there. I'm not saying that Haskins is as good as Josh Allen. All I'm saying is 2 years in, Josh Allen, his numbers looked like Dwayne Haskins' numbers. Okay, so the WFT are going to have to look at the situation and say to themselves, did we quote unquote give up too soon? Did we make a decision too hastily? Thanks, Mrs. K. Mrs. K helping us out on the production side. I got to keep talking for 45 minutes to an hour. But don't worry, I got a lot to talk about. Thanks, Mrs. K. So, again, number one, should Haskins have been the pick? Great. If you don't believe he should have been the pick, okay. Stand in line with everyone else. We'll get to you in a second, sir. Number two, how this guy was developed. Now, if I'm the coach, and Jay Gruden was the coach at the time, and I didn't want this particular guy on my team, okay, I'm going to nail him to the bench, right? which is what basically happened. Haskins was kind of nailed to the bench. Then you started to hear a lot of things coming out of Redskins Park. He's not a hard worker. It's not focused enough. He's not expect him to be prepared to be a starter. Okay. There's a lot of guys that weren't prepared to be starting quarterbacks in the NFL that eventually matured in the position, matured as a person and an individual, and then were able eventually to take on that role. Okay, so let's look at somebody like I don't know, Brett Favre. Brett Favre drank and partied his way out of Atlanta. He didn't start out in Green Bay as this guy, the next great quarterback in the league. He had the potential. Okay, they saw it back in college. Okay, he gets to Atlanta. He's a little wild, a little crazy, and basically drinks and parties his way out of Atlanta. Ends up in Green Bay with a good coach, and then the rest is football history. Okay, you're going to tell me that 2 years in, you have is done to wrath from Redskins fans, and some of it I'm just not going to go. So let's look at the it's Festivus season, right? Let's look at the let's airing of grievances will now begin. I'm going to look at text go down the airing of grievances that a lot of WFT fans. I don't see any of you out here, so you people can hush. All right. Hold on, we got a call. Let's see. We got a boy Cody calling in. I think we're gonna have some. Cody, you want to get on, baby?
Yes, sir. Let me know.
You're on,
I'm
Cody.
on this Haskins topic.
We've got Cody on the Bennett from the Bennett Breakdown joining the show. Wish Cody could be here live, but we're going to have him on the phone. And Cody's going to stick with me for a hot second. Cody, before I really get lathered up and get going in, talk to us about what your take is on the WFT situation. And why don't you just lead us into the aftermath and what the scuttlebutt is for Sunday's game for the division?
You know, I, I do think this is the best thing, like Rivera said, for both parties. I think it's going to be good for, the team needs to get him out of there, get rid of some of the drama that's going on and look on to something new. And for Haskins, a change of scenery can do wonders for a young quarterback. I mean, you got to think this kid's just turned 23 years old. He's young. He's easily influenced, and he just got selected in the first round. He came into a situation that I didn't think was that great anyway. The coaching staff, like you mentioned earlier, didn't like him and says he wasn't ready and wasn't prepared enough to start when they drafted him in the first round.
And Cody, before he even showed up, and
exactly.
that kind of worries me a little bit, and that's from an organizational standpoint, which we can talk about later. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and so, I mean, on top of that, he's not really given that shot because of those circumstances. Then the coach gets fired, and he gets a brand new coach with a brand new system and a run-first offense that he has to relearn still as a young quarterback. And he caught a little bit of stride. You look at those numbers of last season, those last couple games, he was slowly improving, and he was getting better. Then COVID happened, and he's got no off season to work with anybody at all, other than here and there on Zoom meetings, which is not any way someone who needs to learn, from only starting 16 games in college. He needed that time. Then you get I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks of training camp it was before he comes into a system with a brand new coach that he has to relearn all over again. 3 starts, then he's benched.
Yeah, it's the push and pull. It's the push and pull.
I just think, the circumstances were very bad, and that change of scenery for these guys, like not comparing the two, but more or less the situation, like a Tannehill who didn't gain any stride down there in Miami. I mean, you guys look at guys like AB, who couldn't get it together. He goes over to Tampa Bay and is getting things on track. That change of scenery, that switch up from the constant, you know, and can definitely get these guys going. And I hope it happens for Dwayne because I do believe he's got potential for the talent that he shows.
Let's talk about these numbers. I had mentioned the statistics for Haskins compared to a guy like a Josh Allen, which were eerily similar. Now, Steve is reaching out to us on the show. Steve Crump says you can't be serious because the eye test and Josh Allen came from a small school. So let's talk to that. What Allen had that was different than Haskins, he's got the strong arm, but the difference is Josh Allen can get himself out of trouble a lot better with his legs. Okay, he is a better quote unquote pure athlete than Haskins is on the run. The difference I felt that would have been an issue for Haskins coming out of Ohio State was the offense that they run. He can see the field at the snap. Okay, and I think with a guy like Haskins, that's not the greatest athlete in the world. And by the way, you realize the comparison and the shift is that he's not really. I think the correct pro quarterback now that's successful that is similar to a Haskins would be somebody like not the greatest athlete in the world, but Ben does have a better feel for the position, okay? But the reason you see the better feel for Ben is because he's been in the league now, 13 years, okay? So sitting back there in a spread format where you can see the defense in front of you and you're already, 5 yards back from the center at the snap, what Tony said a couple of weeks ago was that Haskins is a two-read quarterback. And I think that's what he is right now. Okay. Russell Wilson was a one-read quarterback. Wouldn't you agree, Cody?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you look at quarterback. I did see Tony mention in there, name the last quarterback that Washington has developed. You look at Kirk Cousins. He was a two-read quarterback, in Washington when he came there. And again, not necessarily hasn't won anything too much over there in Minnesota, but as far as numbers and progress, he's grown and definitely broken outside of that shell. And
he sure has made a lot of money, Cody.
For years.
He's made a lot of money, Cody.
Oh, he's made a lot of money.
So, what is your feeling as far as you talked about the change of scenery? Since we're on the line and we're talking about it, we're just 10 minutes, 15 minutes in. By the way, everybody, thanks for joining us on the TD Report today. We're talking Dwayne Haskins. We've already talked about his release from the WFT. We're talking with Cody Bennett of the Bennett Breakdown. And let's talk about what's next for Dwayne Haskins. I would assume Jerry Jones is probably in his inbox right now.
And the only thing that kind of I think would be standoffish with that is, I guess, the money that he's owed, which isn't too much. So just a team would have to find the work for it. So I don't think he's going to be starting just because he hasn't shown that he's worth the amount of money he would cost.
What's his dead cap right now? About $8.6 million?
I'm pulling it up now because I just had it. Find it here in my notes.
It was really an emotional moment. 6 weeks after the campaign launched.
Yeah, I'll keep looking for it.
Yeah,
but,
I don't think he's.
Regardless, I just don't see him. I can see him almost taking a route of being somewhere in this, backing somebody up behind the vet, possibly. I can see someone trying to shape this guy because I do believe all he needs is a bit of coaching. I think it's his mental. I really don't think it's his talent as much as it is his mental. Again, you're going to say the eye test. You see how he plays. Yeah, he plays a bad game. Everybody has played a bad game. Your favorite player ever has played a bad game and played multiple of them. I mean, you look at players in their rookie season, which this guy's only played 16 games in his career so far in the league. So if you put that against someone else's rookie season, like, say, a Peyton Manning, who still holds the record in the NFL for the most interceptions by any quarterback, that doesn't mean much when you look at his numbers, and I feel like that's what a lot of the hate is based off of. So I believe his talent can be, something worthwhile. It just has to get there mentally.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I think you're right. He might have to sit, might have to quote unquote lay up for a couple of years. and really sit back and hold a clipboard. I do think as a first round quarterback, his situation, the way that the new rookie salary cap is set up for for first rounders or early round draft picks, it's not. It used to be if you were able to move for like 4 years.
His first, they'd be on the hook for, which is 1.8, something like that, and his 2020 is 2.4 million. So a total 4.26, and also they'd be responsible for next week's salary, which is like $67,000.
Also, the
So,
Redskins would be
yeah,
on the cap. Are going to have to accelerate his. They're going to accelerate that 14 million. What is? Did he get an $8 million signing bonus? Right. So they're going to have to accelerate that against the cap. So that's their dead cap plus the salary for
exactly.
next year. Right.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. And I listen, Cody. I haven't gotten this kind of money, so I don't know what this means. When you say signing bonus, I think a lot of us assume that they just write you a check for that amount that day, and I think that might be what they do. I think you just walk away with the, and then you, as the
Essentially, yeah.
organization, get to
I
you
think it's
get
more
to
of a transfer, but
yeah, yeah. I want the Brinks truck.
yeah, right.
I want the
I want a
Antonio
big money
Brown.
bag.
Yeah, I want the
I
Antonio
want the money
Brown.
bag. Yep.
So okay, so he's not impossible to move. Well, I mean, not
No,
impossible to move. He's
no.
not impossible to pick up. So,
He's affordable, but it's just I feel like you have to find the worth in his skill, and unless somebody is hurting right now, I don't know if that's going to happen.
not right
I mean,
now.
a lot of
No.
teams, no, and I can see them trying to bank on a quarterback in a later round pick rather than getting this guy who hasn't shown much on the field.
Okay.
Now, there might be some desperate people out there, during free agency who grabs him up and sees potential in him, like a lot of have seen. But it's a big question mark.
I keep coming back to it. I look at how much Dak Prescott is going to have made this year, okay, under the franchise tag. The Cowboys can franchise him again if they want to. I think they can transition tag him next year, right? So Haskins is a lot cheaper, okay? And you know how Jerry is. Jerry is always trying to draw against an inside straight. I mean, he's always taking risks. And I could see him doing something like that. What happened with
The
Johnny
only
Manziel? They had to take Jerry's phone from him physically. They had to take his phone away to keep him from drafting that guy. He would go at. I think he would go after Dwayne Haskins. That's what I. If I was a Cowboy fan, that's what I'd be afraid of today.
the only reason why I wouldn't think that is because, again, with Jerry, I think after this season he's going to want to win now, and I got faith enough in that guy that he at least understands Haskins is not his best option to win now.
Well, if listen, if Zeke is going
I
to
would
have
like
five
to
fumbles
get him.
and 5 touchdowns, I don't think the Cowboys have to worry about a Super Bowl or win now.
Yeah.
That's bad,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about the release. We've talked about what Haskins' next options are. With Cody Bennett here on the TD Report. Cody Bennett of the Bennett Breakdown has joined us. In case you're wondering where Tony is, Mr. Tony is not feeling well tonight, and I'm going to do the show for you. Cody, can you hang out for a minute? I want to,
Yeah,
since
I
I've
got,
got you
got a little bit
here,
of time.
since I've got you, what we would do with Tony is we would just go down the game slate from from last week. Let's talk about what happened. Pittsburgh, 28-24 comeback win over the Indianapolis Colts. Pittsburgh wins their division. Okay, big win for the Steelers to get the ship heading in the right direction. Since they've clinched, they're in. What do you think they're going to do in their final game? What do you think they do in their finale? They're going to rest the starters, aren't they?
I believe they have to. But knowing Tomlin, they might not. The guys I think like Ben might, if early in the first, I believe Ben and them are going to come out and start. I do. Other than maybe James Conner, who's been banged up and might need that rest to get prepared. I think I would see, if they get up 7 points or up 14 points,
He's out of there.
he's out of there. Obviously, I believe that's when he's going to pull him. But I could see him coming out there and starting, just because the way those guys play up there in Pittsburgh, it's they're tough. So
How about a preseason look? I was thinking more of a preseason look. Hey, look, you're dressing, you're going out there with the first team. The first 6 plays are scripted. 5 of them are going to be handoffs. We are not dropping you back 6 times in a row and letting
No.
and letting somebody.
You're gonna see even with Ben in there, you're gonna see a whole lot of Anthony McFarland and a whole lot of Benny Snell.
They need it.
I mean, those guys are gonna get it all. If James Conner plays, he'll get a handful of touches. I'd say no more than 5 to 6 all game. He's been beat up pretty bad, and on top of it, when healthy, hasn't been producing too much. So I think there might be something lingering. He might need that extra bit of rest. It's going to be all those guys back there, Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland out of Maryland. They're going to get all the touches.
Let's talk about the Giants against the Ravens. Baltimore handles business, takes out the Giants, the G-men, 27-13. Baltimore looking pretty good. They're sitting in the 6th position and looking at a first rounder against Buffalo if the playoffs ended today. So Baltimore moving forward, they're going to just to keep their playoff position, and I don't think they're on the bubble. I think they're in decent shape to, but there's still some reckoning to be made.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong on this side. Might need to fact check it or get somebody to fact check me in the comments. But if they lose next week, I think something can happen to where they don't make it in. Or did they clinch with this game?
They didn't clinch. No, I don't think anybody on from 5, 6, and 7, those seeds did not clinch. So because they're all sitting at the 5, 6, and 7 seed in the AFC right now, all sit at 10 and 5. And 2 of them are in the same division. So something could happen, with those. So we're going to talk about that too. I just wanted to go through what happened last week and then, moving forward.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Chicago, Jacksonville.
Keeping it the same.
Yeah. Chicago, Jacksonville. Chicago opens up a can on Jacksonville. Chicago's still in the hunt. Kansas City edges Atlanta 17-14. Kansas City's just continuing to move on. They're sitting at 14-1 anyway. They've clinched home field. They've clinched home field. Nobody can catch them now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I believe Jacksonville, with that loss in Chicago, actually clinched the number 1 overall pick.
Because the Jets took out the Cleveland Browns.
Yep.
Let's talk about this game. I am not a Baker Mayfield fan. I wasn't when he got drafted. Honestly, I'm going to sound like Gary Bertier from Remember the Titans talking to Big Julius. Really? I think he's nothing. I think you're nothing. But honestly, he has gotten better this year. He's improved. I'm credit where it's due. He has improved, and I think something that he said after the game, there was a late fumble. He fumbled late in that game and basically killed their hopes to even have a chance to tie the game. It was a 4th down. He fumbled through the line, and he didn't recover his own fumble. We all know what that means in the NFL. That means that's a turnover on downs. You can't own fumble on 4th down.
Yep.
So he said something after the game that made me more of a fan of his, okay? He took full responsibility for that loss. All of it, okay? Absolutely. You don't see that very rarely. You'll see that with one of the great quarterbacks like an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson. If they throw a bad pick at the end of a game, Russell Wilson, come on, he's a stand-up dude. He's going to look, guys, that was awful.
Yeah.
I didn't read it. That I should have seen that guy rotating over. I didn't read it. He picked it. I'm sorry, fellas. That's on me. That's what a quarterback should do. And we're gonna do Tony's ABC After School special, but that's what a quarterback's supposed to do. Hopefully, Dwayne Haskins can learn from that. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I get that the running game isn't great. He doesn't have a great team around him, but at some point you're sitting in that locker room with your guys and you're like, fellas, I effed up. That was my fault.
Yeah, it bounces back to that that age that I referenced, that 23. You're a young guy. You're mature. I mean,
Hmm.
immature in a sense. You can be mature, outside when the camera's looking at you for the most part, unless you're in a club somewhere. But regardless, you're easily influenced.
Sure,
Um,
I agree.
most
It's,
most of the time.
I mean, he
And
won't be the. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Cody.
no. I mean, I was just saying. You look at Baker Mayfield, and I mean, he's grown a lot in that situation. And when Baker first came in, he didn't really have too much around him, and the people he did have around him weren't too pleased to be there. It was more, and I could count on your reference of that remember the Titans with Julius's words right back to him. What team? What team? Because that's how he probably felt when he got there.
Sure.
But then he showed that poise and growth and showed these guys that he's actually fighting for this team and for the wins, and now people want to play for him. He's got
Right.
his line looking better than I've seen Cleveland's line looking out there. His wide receivers weren't out there last week, but the tight ends, showed up. He had targeted his tight ends more than he's had all year. I think he's looking great, especially in these put up great numbers.
Well,
Baker Mayfield.
yeah, Baker. Baker. I think is he might be starting to grow up, and I'm okay. It's I was hard on Baker. From the time he got to Cleveland, and honestly, I was more bullish on Haskins than I was on Mayfield when they first got to where they were going. But NFL careers can be stressful, and it can define somebody. It can also expose. It can expose weaknesses. So and character flaws. So
Yeah, I mean, when you're thrust into the spotlight like that, man, it's got to be insanely stressful. I can only imagine. It took me time to grow up. When I was 23, I was acting a fool, I'm sure still. So if I was jet set into the spotlight like these guys are, you're gonna, do your things. Like you referenced earlier with Brett Favre. He partied his way out of Atlanta.
it
That
was
guy
legend.
was enjoying that spotlight 100%.
Brett Favre didn't have to do it on Twitter. All I'm gonna say,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna tell you for straight up, no joke. When I was in college, UVA went number one in college football. It had never happened before. We weren't expecting it to happen. Let me tell you, some debauchery went down. Now listen, we didn't have to do it over the internet. Okay, so what happened? It pretty much stayed in Charlottesville. These guys now, what they do is so magnified. And people will say, oh, social media, he shouldn't have been partying and taking pictures at the stripper party. Okay, I get it. Here's the problem 30 years ago, there was no such thing as quote unquote social media. So there wouldn't have been cameras at a strip joint anyway because they won't allow
Oh no.
cameras in. They wouldn't allow cameras in one. If anything, it was a guy that knew a girl that worked that night. There was a cocktail waitress whose cousin was there, said that this guy did this. Well, if it ain't on a police report, at that point, what happened? Who's to say what
Oh,
happened?
there's a lot of NFL players that probably wouldn't have made it in today's world of media.
We can go down the list. Babe Ruth would not have made it. Mickey Mantle would have been thrown out of baseball for the debauchery he went through. I mean, he was crazy. Billy Martin fighting at the Tropicana all the time. I mean, the Copa, it was the Copa, I guess it was, where the Yankees all hung out. I mean, come on. When I look at the stuff that Dwayne Haskins has done over his career, the stuff that he's done, only two of them were against league rules. There's no rule
One
that
of them,
says you
one of
can't.
them,
There's no rule that
one of
says you
them.
can't throw a
I
party.
was gonna say one
Yeah.
of them technically wouldn't have been against league rules if it was last year.
Well,
It's just because of the
the pandemic.
season that we're in.
The pandemic. I mean, and I get that. And at the same time, I mean, there were some WFT fans who were upset about him buying a Maybach. I don't really care. Drive with a Mazda 626 that your uncle gave you, who was that? Alfred Morris had. Go on and drive that, bro. The minivan that your grandmother gave you, drove in college. Okay, look,
And the people that are upset about him going to buy that would be the same ones that went and bought themselves a nice car if they would have got an $8 million signing bonus at 23 years old as well.
yeah, I mean, okay, maybe he could have bought a Range Rover. I don't know, something, just a nibble, just something small. So,
Right.
Moving on, Seattle over the Rams. Seattle 20, the Rams 9. The Rams are still hanging on. We're going to get to the playoff picture in a second. Dallas over Philadelphia, 37 to 17. I looked at Jalen Hurts' numbers in this game. They weren't bad. When I turned the game off, I pulled his stats. He had 18 completions for 311 yards. Now, one of those was an 81 yarder to Deshaun Jackson. Even if you take that 81 yards away for one play, that's still 17 completions for over 230 yards. He's not check down Charlie. He's trying to make more plays and push the ball a little passing tree.
Absolutely.
What do you think about him as a developing quarterback? And obviously, we're the finale that's essentially going to be for the division. The WFT are going to go to into this Philadelphia game with, at best, their second string quarterback coming off of injury, and that would be Alex Smith. That would be the ideal situation. You hope that Alex is at what, 80% if he can go. He's a veteran guy. If he says he can go, he can go. I don't care how many practice reps he's had. He knows the offense. He has been in the league. He's been in big games. He's been in playoff games.
He doesn't need the practice.
This is a playoff game. Period. This is a playoff game. If Alex Smith wakes up, gets on the field, and he doesn't feel it, and I don't have it today. I'm serious. I mean this. And the coaches watch him push off of that ankle, or they look at him on that leg and say, you know what? He's not the move. They're going to go to a third string quarterback that they just brought in 2 weeks ago from, I think he's ODU, right? Taylor Heineke.
He went to Old Dominion, but
Old.
he also just recently played for the St. Louis Battlehawks in the XFL before that went down, and he was second overall in quarterback stats out there, and next to the defenders.
So he's got some pro experience.
He's got some pro experience. He was balling in the XFL. He looked great. There's a lot of pros who actually give this guy some high claim. Like Torrey Smith is one who's been talking about this guy for quite a while, saying that he's just a pure baller. And, as far as the IS goes, he came out in that game last week and looked pretty damn good. For someone who might not have been on the field since the XFL went down in a pro setting, he looked pretty good. And I think that the Washington football team would have faith enough in him to put him out there if not force, if he's not 100%. I think I would have faith as well. I mean, just watching him yesterday and the play calls that Turner and Rivera, whoever was calling plays overall, were giving this guy. They were more downfield throws than I've seen them give Alex or Haskins. Now, obviously, that was into the game script. He was making some big completions, and I think that adds a little bit of faith and takes some of the pressure off this coaching staff's back going into next week, knowing that they do have a valuable option back there who can actually throw that ball and get out of the pocket if needed.
Okay, I can dig it. I used to see his statistics at ODU. He had some gaudy stats. Anybody here that's listened to the show or hears the show, go look at his stats at Old Dominion. This guy was a gunslinger, man. He was putting up. I think one game he completed like 39 passes. It was like 39 for 50 for like 400. I mean, he was putting up, Tecmo Bowl numbers. I mean, it was insane.
Yep, Taylor Heineke. I'll put it in the chat here in a second.
Excellent. So, Cody, let's get your take on this playoff picture. We'll start in the AFC. First round bye is going to go as it sits today. We're going to talk about it as it sits today, not how it will be after Sunday's games. Kansas City, 14-1. They've got the first round bye at this point. Clinched home field throughout the playoffs. Simple, effective. The 2 seed, your Pittsburgh Steelers, won their division, clinched it. 12-3 record, been a little shaky. As you guys remember, started out, 11-0, and then ran in a little trouble here in D.C. To the WFT, and then kind of swooned for a couple of weeks there, but looks like they righted the ship. We'll see how they look in the finale. As the playoffs sit today, they would match up with the 7 seed Cleveland Browns at 10-5. Okay. Again, these could change based on the final game because when you hear what happens with the third and the sixth seed, you'll understand. Third seed would be the Buffalo Bills, looking good at 11-3. Okay. On Monday night against the New England Patriots, who are playing for nothing. They're done. So Buffalo, I feel like Buffalo should basically roll over these guys to get to 12-3, and then we'll talk about next week for them. They would match up as the third seed with the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, Baltimore Ravens at 10-5, still not out of the woods yet, which you'll understand. Tennessee Titans lost to the Green Bay Packers, got stomped. They've dropped to 10-5. They would drop to the 4 seed and would be looking at a 4-5 game against the 5th seed Miami Dolphins against the Marine Mammals. So, from what you hear from what I'm talking about, Cody, you've got Cleveland and Baltimore in the same division. You've got Miami and Tennessee. Those 4 teams are all at 10-5. So a lot could change in that final week, okay? And a lot of scenarios. And basically, out of those 4 teams, one of them is not going to make the playoffs. Somebody below them could jump up and snatch that 7th spot.
I think Miami is going to impress a lot of people.
I'm impressed so far. I mean, hey, Fitz magic, baby.
Yeah, and you know, people are giving this Tua a lot of flack as well down there, and I don't think it's warranted necessarily. I think a lot of times people are quick to jump on a quarterback, especially when they don't perform right away. And perform, I mean, play massive. I think people underestimate those constant, mediocre numbers as a rookie. You know, he's played pretty well, and I think either him or Fitzpatrick have what it takes to lead that team and that amazing defense that they've had, into a deep playoff run.
I've got to give a shout. Guy I went to UVA with, Ahmad Hawkins, has his own radio show. The Ball Hawk. We'll give him some love. You know, we give away game too. He made an interesting comparison with Tua as an antecedent to the type of game and the way that he plays. Tua is not a big arm guy. He has to really wind it up to get it down the field. Okay, but he's not going to be your typical strong arm deep ball thrower like a Brett Favre, like a John Elway, Pat Mahomes. You know, a guy that can basically beat you deep. You know, with his arm. But he is going to throw in windows. He's going to hit seams, and he's going to depend on accuracy. And what Ahmad did, what Hawk called him, he said he's Chad Pennington, which not a terrible analogy. What do you think?
I'm not. I will say this. That's a little early for me to recall that throwing motion for that reference.
Chad Pennington was not a strong armed guy. Okay,
No.
but Chad was, I believe he was Randy Moss's quarterback at Marshall. So, I don't think. Let's just say this: nobody ever overthrows Randy Moss in college.
You can't do it.
You can't do it.
Down there and find it.
I don't think there was anybody at Florida State, and there was nobody at Notre Dame that could overthrow Randy Moss. But it was an interesting analogy. I just thought I'd throw that out there to you. It was something I heard today. Let's move into the NFC. Green Bay Packers, about the quietest 12-3 you're ever going to see. Green Bay Packers sit at 12-3. They would be your top seed in the NFC round by. But with one game remaining, Seattle at the 3 seed with 11-4. So things could change. Those three could. What's that?
I said things definitely could change.
They could flip. Those three could flip, and you could end up with a Seattle or a New Orleans as your 1 seed, and get. So they're all still fighting for the bye. New Orleans at the 2 seed would be going. The Chicago Bears still hanging on at 8-7. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, I mean, Mitch Trubisky is, a lot of these guys that we thought were done in, and finished. Mr. Trubisky's been on it these past couple weeks. But I do think that New Orleans is going to come out here and kind of bring them back to the good old Bears that we've been used to seeing. Especially coming off of that 6-touchdown performance by Alvin Kamara. They're going to be riding that momentum like crazy.
Alvin Kamara had 6 touchdowns in one game. Zeke Elliott has 5 touchdowns all year.
Yeah, all season.
That's amazing. Seattle would be matched up in the 3 spot against the LA Rams. That's not a game that Seattle wants to see.
No, and the way that Seattle's been playing, beginning of the season and up to midway through, that defense was like the worst defense in allowed yardage, allowed touchdowns to every skill position on the field, like we've seen in the past 20 years. And they have completely flipped that, whether it be easy offenses or, should I say, more opportunistic offenses that they played. That may be the case, but, I mean, they've kind of proven everybody wrong these past couple weeks by showing it out consistently. And if they keep that defensive pressure up that they've been showing and the scoring output that Russell Wilson and that offense is capable of, I really could see those guys jumping into that number 1 spot. It's going to be real tough to see how things shake out in these next couple weeks.
Okay. I was thinking that, because that essentially is a division game and in a playoff situation, that's that third game, that you, and you never want to have that third game, i.e. the one that quote unquote really counts, be a playoff game. If I was Seattle, I'd be a little worried about that one.
Yeah, which makes sense. I agree.
Here we go. In the 4th spot, your 6-9 WFT would be going up against the 5 seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That would be a very interesting game. I think that would be an interesting game, and we'll talk about the scenarios for the WFT after that. But if that was the potential matchup, if everything stayed the same, what would you think about that matchup if you're the WFT? You'd have to like that.
I don't know if I do.
Why not?
That defense, Tampa Bay, the defense has been vulnerable the past couple weeks, but they were tough coming into the season. And that offense, I'm not happy about seeing Mike Evans and Leonard Fournette, whether Rojo's healthy or not, and Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin and Tom Brady. I don't want to play them in the playoffs. It's going to be a tough game if they don't. Washington football team doesn't figure out that quarterback situation or have a healthy quarterback back there. It's going to be a really tough game for that Washington team to get past.
I think if you're the WFT, whoever you get in that spot, you got to like your chances. I don't care who it is.
Oh, just getting there, where we will be ecstatic. Absolutely.
There's nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose.
There's nothing to lose at all, and it has been done. So it's not
right.
Something impossible.
Yeah, and anybody, WFT fans. Yeah, if you're a WFT fan, it's literally like you should be happy as a pig in slop. You just happy to be here. Hey man, I'm still in it. I'm still playing. And honestly,
the only thing that disappoints me with that, and sorry to cut you off, but the only thing that disappoints me with that is it'd be one thing if it was a competitive season in this division, but the fact that everyone has been pretty bad, I don't feel too good about it. I feel like we got a participation medal, and we're just the only one who showed up for the day. So if we do make it officially, we're just there by default in a sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's.
It's what we do with it is what we'll be happy about.
It's
first round.
Yeah.
That's what we'll be happy.
Cody, it's a game show. The NFC East this year is a game show. First place, you get a playoff game. Second place, you get a set of steak knives. Third place, you're fired. Little Glenn Ross there. But
right.
when you look at these guys, what's going to happen with the NFC East? So the scenario for the NFC East is this. WFT in first place right now as it sits. If they win next week against the Eagles, they're in. Doesn't matter what the Giants or Cowboys do. Win and you're in. You've made it to the point where you can win and control your destiny to get. There's nobody that you can quote unquote blame or say this happened or whatever. You have one game to win and you're in. Dallas Cowboys need a Washington loss and they must win their game against the Giants. Conversely, if WFT loses and the Giants win the Giants game against Cowboys, the Giants win the division and get that fourth seed. Very interesting scenario, nice and clean on the last week of the season, but about as simple as it gets for Dallas. You've got a chance to do something with your season that should have been lost. You lost your quarterback to the Giants. You lost your starting quarterback. You didn't exactly play that well before you lost Dak for the season, but again, still have a shot.
And lost Dalton.
What's that?
Then they lost Dalton for 3 games.
Then they lost Dalton for 3 games, and still to have a shot to win the division and host a playoff game. And then, of course, the Giants. Similar situation.
I will credit Dallas, because something you don't see as often as I think you should is offensive coordinators exploiting cornerback matchups in a game throughout the whole game. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was something that I saw earlier today that they would line up. I can't think of his name, but the cornerback that he was just
For who?
in the Cowboys game. They shadowed him on Amari Cooper all game for the first half. I mean, and Michael Gallup completely went off.
Oh yeah. Gallup did have a good game. I mean, but that's the problem with the Cowboys. And I've said this. I said this before the season even started. The Cowboys are Jekyll and Hyde. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what kind of effort you're going to get. You don't know what kind of effort you're going to get. You don't know what kind of execution you don't know what kind of toughness you're going to get. You just get guys in Dallas Cowboy uniforms and Jerry World. That's what you get. It's like a I don't know, a circus attraction. I mean, it's not a football team. That's not football.
But and that's what I wanted to credit them was that the way that what I was trying to say was the quarterback weakness that they had was Darius Slay had shadowed Amari Cooper for the first half, and that's why Gallup took off. And went on. He had a great first half, but then in the second half they swapped and had Slay shadow Gallup, which then had Cooper go on. So the stat that blew my mind though is Slay only allowed 40 yards on 3 targets in 31 cover snaps that game. The opposing cornerback Jaquette allowed 204 yards on 11 targets and 18 cover snaps all game.
Mm-hmm.
So the Cowboys saw that on offense and literally exploited it all game long. And if they do that next week, they have a good chance at looking, a lot better in what they got. They obviously, I think, would need some losses to happen with the Washington team. But regardless, that's something that I feel like is a big key to do on offense that you don't see often, or as much as you should.
I think you make a great point. Cody, are you in front of your system right now?
I have screenshots, but I can pull something up. What you need?
Well, basically, what I want to do, let's talk about the schedule next week for for the last game of the season. I think that's week 18.
Yep.
Want to look at Cleveland, Baltimore, Miami, and Tennessee. Those are your bottom 4 seeds in the AFC. And those are the numbers. Those are the seeds that are more likely to change.
Okay, bear with me. I'm pulling
Sure, no problem. Me,
over
bro.
here.
Plenty of time. Just talking roll over for you there.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what Cleveland we get. That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. Okay, Baltimore.
Baltimore is looking at can find them. Sorry, this working on getting my full setup fixed.
I got you. Normally, I would have Tony do it, but he's the encyclopedia. You know what I'm saying? Everything else I got to look up.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, Big Tony. Big Tony. So I've got Baltimore Cincinnati 1 p.m. game. Baltimore, that's a must. That's a must win. Got to win that. Baltimore, Cincinnati. I think Baltimore handles that. Baltimore's got to win that to solidify their spot and keep from getting bumped out, just in case. They don't want somebody to jump up from the eighth, from the eighth spot and jump up in
You
there and
don't,
cause a problem at a loss.
you don't think that'll be a good game to see with the way the Bengals have came out these past 2 weeks with beating off the Steelers on a Monday night,
I
finishing the Texans off in a high-scoring shootout yesterday?
I think Baltimore's learned their lesson, and I think they're going to be okay. That's just my take on it. But like you said, anything can happen the last week of the season. I mean, this has been a season like it's been wild. So, you know,
I could see Cincinnati putting up a fight. They've looked pretty decent these past 2 weeks, surprisingly enough. And especially against Pittsburgh, man, that was a tough game.
interesting game. Buffalo, Miami, and
It's a division game,
yeah,
so
Buffalo, Miami, and
it's a little
yeah.
different.
You've got Buffalo, Miami. That's going to be the finale for Miami and Buffalo. Assuming Buffalo wins this week, which I think they will, they'll win tonight. That'll be 12-3. But what if they lose tonight and go to 11-4? They still, I think they should be okay. But Miami at 10-5, that's they can solidify their spot and go to 11-5 with that win. I think that's a game Miami wants to win.
I have Miami winning that Bills game.
You have them winning. You have them beating Buffalo in the finale.
I do. Yes,
Okay,
I do.
that's
It's gonna be a
wild.
good one, but yeah, that I got them. That's my bold call of the week. I got the Dolphins beating the Bills next week. And depending on what put a damper on the Bills, well, I guess it all depends. It all depends on how everything else shakes out. There's a lot of what ifs this next week.
You have Flores winning Coach of the Year, right?
Actually, the only one I got, if I don't know. He's definitely in the top three.
Top three. Okay. Let me do this. I'm going to move on to. Let's look at Chicago. Last game of the season. What have we got here? I'm looking on my phone right now just to see. I've got Chicago at Green Bay. Bad news. Hey, Shayna from Chi-Town, one of our listeners, one of our watchers. Sorry, y'all ain't winning that game. This is K. Yeah, y'all are winning that game. You're not beating them. I mean, Green Bay's not going to lay down in that game, and I don't care if Rodgers doesn't play. I just don't see them beating Green Bay. I just don't see it. And Green Bay does need the game, so it's I or I think it's adios for Chicago there. We talked about the Los Angeles Rams. Who do the Rams have last? The Rams have the Cardinals. Um, that's an interesting game. I think the Cardinals have shown me a little something this season. I think they have acquitted themselves rather well. They haven't had a great year, but pretty good. I'd like to see them. I'd like to see them finish on a strong point. I think Kyler Murray's been pretty good this year. A lot to learn, but he's had his good games. Good season.
Yeah, he's a little banged up right now. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I believe it's his ankle or something in his leg that he had tweaked last game. And I do believe he's been limited all week in question. No, that game is going to be a lot tougher for Arizona to pull off, obviously.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, Cody, person, but you've been on the phone with me now for almost 40 minutes, bro. You're doing yeoman's work for us. That's going to be Cody Bennett on the Bennett Breakdown. We are going to have him on. We'll have you on Thursday, and what we want to do is we'll go through the slate and get everyone's lineup set. How are you looking in your leagues right now, buddy?
I am finished. I am completely finished. I took home the championship in 4 of 7. I came in second place in 2 of them, and another I was completely done.
Man, that's great, bro. That's excellent. Thanks for being. You're a big part of what we do here at the TD Report. Big Tony, we're going to have you hopefully on Thursday. More than likely, I'm going to do a remote. I'm going to remote in on Thursday. But if anything, I wish everyone happy and healthy. Hope everyone had a great Christmas. Get well, Mr. Tony. End up right now. We want to thank you for joining us on the TD Report. We are going to be back on Thursday, 7:15. Cody, we're gonna sign you off, and we